And now, we return to the purveyors of real estate knowledge, your Real Estate Chalk Talk.
Hi, welcome to the program. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk. We're broadcasting from the Rack Shack Barbecue Studios. RealEstateChalkTalk.com is your resource with search tools and our vendor partner contact information to help you get that home ready for sale. 612-627-8000 is the number to call. Remember, we can't help you if you don't call. 612-627-8000. Call us today. I'm Keith Hittner Sr. We're here in the studio with Keith Hittner Jr. and the money man, Kelvin Kaemingk. Kelvin's got some little-known secrets. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. We ran out of time the last hour. This is hour 2 of the program, but we'll get back to Kelvin later in the hour. And this is the new year. The 2016 meeting and training season is upon us, so call the Rack Shack Barbecue Catering Hotline today and order your meeting meals. Feed your staff with mouth-watering smoked meats, signature sides and sauces, all at a very low cost per serving. Good for the bottom line, and it's a fringe benefit that the crew sure will appreciate. It's so easy. Just call Elliot, 612-326-0430, or go to RackShackBarbecue.com, click on the catering link, and he'll take care of you. He'll get all the details worked out well within your budget. Rack Shack Barbecue is America's food, and it's the right thing to do. Last hour we had Mike Sadness on the radio dial.
It's a tough name. Right? It's a tough name, isn't it?
Sadness.
I think it's sad. Is it
Sadness?
C-D-N-E-S-S.
I want to say Sandman.
Sandman. Mike Sandman was on the show with Wow One Day Painting. Good conversation about we like having Mike on the show. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And Emily's on the camera today, so we just want to point that out. So if you're in you should run around to the other side so you can get your mugshot on the YouTube. And this hour we're excited. We've got Katie Lindenfelser. Did I say it right?
That was close. Lindenfelser.
Lindenfelser. Dang it, like a linden tree.
We were practicing.
Lindenfelser. I said it 10 times.
It's like Liedenhauser, but it's Lindenfelser.
All right.
Linden.
Katie L. on the program with Crescent Cove. Crescent Cove is a nonprofit, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm just going to read the mission here because I think it's heartwarming. The mission of Crescent Cove is to offer care and support to children and young adults with a shortened life expectancy and their families. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Absolutely. We've been working for several years now to support children who have life-threatening conditions and life-limiting conditions and their families. There are hundreds and thousands of kids in our community and in our state that need support. And there's no residential hospice and respite home for these families. And so we started 6 years ago working with a dream to build this home for families, a place where they can go when their child is near the end of life or at the end of life, and also as an option for respite care, for short breaks. These are kids that have feeding tubes and trachs and sometimes vents and oxygen, many medications and clinical needs and cares throughout the day and night, and parents are usually up throughout the night caring for their children. Sometimes they do have nurses at their homes, but the care is sometimes a little bit overwhelming for families. They do an amazing job, but there's a great need for respite, and that's not very familiar to people who have healthy children. What respite means is just a short break for families so they can regain their energy to keep going and caring for their child, and hopefully also helping to energize and revitalize the whole family and care for the whole family.
Where are these kids now?
Some of them are in their homes and some of them are at hospitals.
Okay.
And for end-of-life care, when a child is dying, they may be receiving treatment all the way through the end of their life, and they may die at the hospital. Some children are sent home because there are no more treatments. That's right. And there are home care agencies that provide care, nursing support, sometimes extended nursing support. So it might be that the family has a nurse overnight, a few nights a week, but not every night. And nurses coming in and out, social workers and so forth, therapists and things in their home as well.
Tell me you said you've been working on this now for 6 years. What motivated you to start on this, and tell us a little bit about that.
The many children and families that I had the honor of being with in the end-of-life season. And there was a little boy named Jack, for example, who had chromosomal disease and was dying at home, and I was a music therapist, and I'm also a massage therapist.
Okay.
And he was cared for by an adult hospice provider, Ridgeview at the time, who cares mostly for adults, but sometimes for kids in the far west metro. And they said, why didn't we have these services a long time ago? These are the typical services that are provided to adults who are near the end of life and on hospice, but they're not available, and they weren't at that time for children. This is in 2003. And I thought, gosh, Jack's parents are really the voices to advocate for more families and kids to have support services. And so when I brought that to the hospital administrators, they said, well, it's a great idea, but there's no research to show that it's beneficial. And there's no funds because kids don't access the Medicare benefit as adults do. So the funding stream is quite different. And so I agree.
So there's funding for hospice if you're older, just not if you're a child, correct?
Well, older adults or adults in general have access to Medicare, a Medicare hospice benefit.
Right.
Kids do on their private insurance plan, and sometimes their Medicaid waiver has a hospice benefit, but the per diem rate of reimbursement is much less than it is for adults who are on hospice.
So it isn't enough to actually provide the service, is that what you're saying?
Those extra services that can provide additional emotional, spiritual support to families.
You said that you had taken care of a number of these children before then, and that's what got you interested in it. Tell us, what do you mean you took care of them? What do you do?
I'm a music therapist and a massage therapist, so I wasn't the nurse, but I was making visits to their families in the home and also at the hospital, and hearing them say, we'd like more support, more services, we need more support, more services. And that led me to be inspired to do some more research, because I'd heard from the administration that there's a need for research, and they're right. And so I went to Australia, to Melbourne, Australia, because they're providing music therapy and spiritual care and a number of services to kids. They're kind of flip-flop. They're doing more for kids. They're starting to do more now for adults, whereas we've always done a lot for adults and now are trying to do more for kids. And they also have a children's residential hospice. And so while I was there and I was visiting with many parents who had lost children about their experiences of music therapy, I heard not only about the value they found in music therapy, but also this wonderful place called Very Special Kids, a children's hospice. And I spent quite a bit of time there then and realized it's not just the Minnesota families aren't just asking for more support. They were also asking, and I heard them ask, I just didn't know what it was, for a place to go when their child was dying. They maybe didn't want to be at home. Or I'd hear parents say, we haven't slept for weeks. Our family is falling apart. We need a break. We don't want to be away from our child necessarily, but we need a break. And this was the kind of place where families were receiving that break.
Is there any research or even anecdotal stories that you can tell about where we've got kids right now who are in the situation that we have in Minnesota right now, where they're done. There's nothing more we can do for them. They got to go home. They're going home to die. And you go into a situation at the house, maybe not the best situation in terms of ability to perform care and to handle that terrible time, versus your Australian visit, where after the death, after it's all done, do the families come out then more intact when they've had the support versus the families here in Minnesota who have not had the support?
I'd say it varies for sure, but certainly the families that I had the opportunity to be with, because then I actually went back to work at Very Special Kids, so I spent a number of months with families and kids receiving end-of-life care and respite care at Very Special Kids. There were families and parents that had those, monthly or quarterly opportunities to take a break, to get some rest, to take care of their other kids, and then being there when their child was dying, talking about that time wasn't with this guilt and regret. It was this, that they were able to be deliberate and intentional about that sacred time at the end of their child's life. They were able to do exactly what they wanted to do. It wasn't kind of flying by the seat of their pants because they're answering the door on the phone and
just trying
to pay their bills and trying to get through. And then they stop and say, I wish I'd held my child more. And at a home like this, they're the ones holding their child and not necessarily needing to be the nurse and the social worker.
Worrying about the distractions of everyday life as well.
That's right. And I was just with a family whose son was dying. I was holding him for a few hours, just a few days before he died, a beautiful boy, in his home. And they've been, advocates for what we're doing and receiving some of the support services that we're providing now on the journey to building this home. And she said, the mom, look at this, Katie. The kids are coming home from school. One of them wants to get out of school early. They're really anxious. Their brother's at home dying. We're having to cancel another clinical appointment for another child. Like all these things that we have to be managing. And all we want to do is be in this room holding their little boy.
And this helps to give them that outreach. This is great. It's crescentcove.org. Crescentcove.org. What a terrible, terrible time for some families, but what a great outlet that you folks provide. We'll be right back with our, what are we in, third segment when we return. 612-627-8000.